Hello! If you
Hello,
came over
everyone.
from, I don't know, probably Bears, you might recognize a couple of us. Um, I'm Abby. I'm Witty X Witch, and this is my good buddy.
I'm Josh, aka JD Tizzle on TikTok, Crooked Mast on Instagram, and with just
So
a couple
we,
of nods.
yeah.
Just a couple of nods.
So we had this idea to basically talk about fantasy shows that we watch, and maybe say nice things about them, maybe not so nice things about them.
We'll see.
But as we were as we would do like just chatting before we started playing Dragon Age, we would just talk about different shows, and I was like, man, we should just like do this more often. And so this is what became of that. Um, and so today we are going to be talking about Legends of Vox Machina season 2, episodes 1 through 3. So yeah, Josh, what are your first thoughts watching Legend of Vox Machina season 2?
Okay, so a little background. I love Critical Role, right? I've always been a big fan, and it's so good to see like all the success they're doing, all the shows they're doing. I even did the Kickstarter for the full season. I should have worn my hat. I had the beanie hat and everything. Season 1 kind of disappointed me a little bit. Season 2 brought back some faith in it, for me at least.
Mm-hmm.
The first 3 episodes, no spoilers in this at all, but
Well, we'll try.
which we'll try. I'll try my best. But the first 3 episodes, I felt like were way more cohesive, way better storytelling, and just way more put together than like how the storytelling was in season 1.
Mm-hmm. So without like getting too spoilery, what was it about season 1 that didn't land for you? Was it like more pacing? Was it characters?
Yeah, so I think because in the original Kickstarter, how they wanted it, it was supposed to be that this a little short, right? And so I think they still had that in mind, and they wanted to fulfill those promises with the Kickstarter. So those first 2 episodes you see at the beginning, that whole little side story, it put the show on a pace I don't think it could keep up with itself, Ron. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that first 2 stories go, and then it goes straight into the Briarwood arc, and then like it kind of like slows down a bit and it ramps up a little bit. But I felt like we didn't want to really care about the characters till the end, right? In terms of
Yeah.
like storytelling, it was just kind of we'll kind of thrown in there, which in how the show was, they were already pretty high levels and were kind of coming into this adventure of them. But I felt like it was going so quick and it was just a lot happening, and I wasn't like, I know the background of it, but I just could see as someone who is new to it just not caring as much.
Right. And I know whenever we talked about this before, I mentioned how my sibling watched it, has never seen the stream, has only watched the cartoon because the stream is just so much,
Mm-hmm.
and watched it and was like, why do you like this again?
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned your background with Critical Role, so I guess I should probably mention mine.
Mm-hmm.
I started watching it maybe halfway, a little bit less than halfway through campaign 1, and got caught up, have seen every episode, or at least listened to every single episode in campaign 1. And campaign 2, I got about halfway through before I was like, okay, this one isn't really for me. I'll get the highlight reel later. And then with campaign 3, I'm kind of catching up as I can, but I'm not doing any backtracking.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it is just so much content to keep up with.
Mm-hmm. No, I saw someone did the calculations, and Critical Role has more like content per minute than One Piece.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so like if you count like all the stuff that Critical Role has, all the campaigns, all the side stuff, it is more than One Piece, which is still like one of the longest things to get through.
That's wild.
Right? And I feel this makes it a little bit more digestible showing it in the show. But
For
I
sure,
mean,
for sure.
which is good for the storytelling aspect of it, because there's a lot of fun pranks. Sam makes all like the thought jokes and side comments. You don't feel like you're at the table, which is what the show is kind of there for. You're kind of supposed to be there at the table listening. But in terms of just having like an animated show, I felt like you kind of still need to have that table aspect in there, right?
Right.
And I felt like in season 1 we kind of had it at some parts, but the first 3 episodes in season 2, I definitely feel like we have a little bit more of that like table talk, as it were, into characters. I felt like the dialogue was more forced in the first season. Like they got like the key moment lines. They got like the like Darling, take off the mask, and all those like key moments.
All the things people remember from the stream.
Right. But this one, they were definitely, it felt more, the conversations felt more organic, like you were at a table, I felt like.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I know for me in season 1, especially talking about that table feel, Sam playing the bard makes incredibly inappropriate jokes all the time, both on stream and in the cartoon. And at the table, that kind of feels a little better because it feels like table talk. And there's this, this play off of his friends and, puns, and they all laugh at it. And so it's like, okay, we're all laughing with Sam. But then when you translate that into a script, it's kind of like, this isn't just something someone said off the fly. You wrote this, and now it feels nasty.
Right.
And that was one thing in season 2 I really appreciated, was that his jokes were still inappropriate but were funnier. They weren't gross.
Sam's jokes make sense when he's at the table, right? And I think when you have that kind of to see everyone's reaction, everyone's laughing, everyone's a part of the joke, rather than they take it out and now everyone's super serious in the show. I definitely think they toned. I think they toned down the serious factor. Like Sam was supposed to like still that funny character, so they toned him back a little bit, but they toned everyone else's like more fun aspect, especially the Briarwood arc. The Briarwood arc is a very serious, very dark arc.
Right. And it is very gothic horror.
Right. And the Chroma Conclave, which is what season 2 is, there's some more funny moments. I feel like there's places for light-hearted moments, which I'm glad that we'll see.
And I feel like the genre of the arc really lends itself to that as well, because like with Briarwood, like I said, it's gothic horror, but with the Chroma Conclave, it is far more epic D&D adventure. And so you have more opportunity to make those types of jokes and have that more table aspect, because this is a typical table in that way. But with that, I think we should throw up our title card and then get into it episode by episode. What do you think?
Sounds good. Let's go.
All right. All right. So this is where we're probably going to get a little spoilery, just so everyone knows. If you haven't seen it yet and you don't want any spoilers, or if you don't want to if you've seen the stream and you don't want the show spoiled, this would be your time to just tippy toe away.
Yeah.
Will not hurt our feelings in any way.
Nope.
So, episode 1, we open where we left off in season 1 with Sovereign Uriel announcing that he is abdicating, with the dragons flying in. So, first impressions of the Chroma Conclave, both from the end of season 1 / the beginning of season 2.
I felt like it was a good place where we picked up on, right? Like it was like like immediately back to like we could have basically like continued the exact same scene. And I kind of like that. It's not like that, like skipping a few things. Like it starts when you leave off with like a cliffhanger like that preludes to like the next thing, that we know what's happening next, right? Most of the audience does, but having for those
bad shit's about to happen.
Bad stuff is going to just wreck everyone's day and emotions. Having that, I felt like was a very good, comfortable place for people just who are watching the show to come in on. In terms of the episode itself, I mean, Chroma Conclave was scary. They are just it is. I know we have talked a little bit about the gore factor of the Critical Role, and how sometimes it's a bit too much.
And I have notes.
Yes. Oh, I'm gonna leave that up to you. But it's just some of it was like funny gore at one part where the legs kept running. I'll just leave it at
Yeah.
that. But at the same time, it's like the whole Uriel scene was he was just standing there, and it's just like it was just like, oh, I am feeling this is terrible. I feel bad, and it's just you just see how just the destruction of Iman just going.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that was on the right track. There's still some moments where it was like, did you really need that?
Yeah.
But it was still very. I think that was necessary for that episode, just to see how bad things are going to be, and what they're dealing with.
So here's my thing, because I definitely am not a big gore person.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled through Game of Thrones when I watched it the first and only time. And I quit watching House of the Dragon because I was just like, I'm tired, among other reasons for the gore factor. And one of my big complaints with Vox Machina season 1 was just how nasty it could be on the gore factor. With Percy's friend in Whitestone getting, chopped in two, and you get the nice intestinal shot, and I'm like, you could have just done the 2 pieces. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you cauterize it, baby. Let's go Star Wars on this.
Mm-hmm.
One thing whenever I saw the teaser clip of Voragal, especially like flying over the castle and ice blasting a group of people, you just see the ice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, this is going to be a little better. Psych! Not too long after that, we get the ice like stabbing people. Like, I'm not sure why the ice, like, I know water expands when it freezes, but like, did it have to explode people? I felt like that maybe was a lot. I'm with the program that these people are in ice and therefore dead. And similarly with like the acid rain from Umbrasyl, I was kind of like,
yeah,
that's not really how acid works. And we saw Grog jump into a pit of acid just last season.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that he's one of our heroes and has, hella high constitution. But acid doesn't just like melt your head off.
Right.
It burns you. Like, what? And like, I wasn't like a crazy fan of the legs, but I can let that one go because it was very much a, plot point to then meet Raishan. Which I did have a note about Raishan, because Raishan shows up and says, Iman shall fall before breathing poison that kills Uriel. But her very next line is when she sees enjoys the taste of fear. And this is such a nitpick, but I really feel like that should have been her first line, because Iman shall fall is just like, yeah, Iman shall fall. And I'm like, yeah, it's a dragon. Duh. Okay. But if her first line is delicious cattle, I'm like, oh God, she's so menacing. And that's the only line you really hear that it's Cree Summer.
Yeah.
The first one, I wouldn't have been able to tell you it was Cree Summer if I didn't already know. But that other one, I'm like, wait, that's Susie. So I don't know. I feel like that would have been a better introduction with Raishan than to immediately follow with "I've seen you" to Keyleth, which is like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel, and then Thordak just being Thordak at top and just fire everywhere. I thought that was like, especially because he's the big bad ancient red dragon, right? And technically, red dragon's all the strongest of the chromas.
Right.
So it's just like they really played with that D&D thing of just like he's the guy. He's the big baddie guy, and he is scary.
And how the other dragons pay him deference.
Yeah. And it was just, and you get to see like, everyone else escaping, and you get to see, no, oh man, I forgot. Why did I forget his name? Glorious Goods.
Gilmore.
Gilmore's Glorious. I don't know why I forgot Gilmore.
But how could you forget Gilmore?
I don't know. Also, the person that plays Gilmore is fantastic. But it's just seeing even like everyone who's like these high powered level people get basically wrecked by these dragons kind of like sets the mood of like we're not in Kansas anymore, right? This is not just your
For
run
sure.
this is not just the run of the mill quest that you get. This is worlds kind of ending, worlds changing forever, bad stuff. We need to do big quest things. And I think that's
Sunil Malhotra is Gilmore's voice actor.
Fantastic.
I was like, that is actually something else about this season, this episode, is the Chroma Conclave, especially since there are new characters, but the voice acting in this batch is just top notch. Like all of the dragons are just giving 100%. They are perfectly cast. Thordak's just deep voice from Lance Reddick is just amazing, perfect for Thordak. Cree Summer has just enough of like the creepiness that is Raishan. Let me find our other two dragons' voices.
Matt also plays Umbrasyl.
Oh, that is right. I forgot about that.
He still plays Umbrasyl, which is fantastic. I like his because Umbrasyl just has like that just like oozing sound, right? Like there's like constantly dripping.
Yeah, it's so interesting when in that final scene from that episode where he kind of has his head down and he's like, "And me, my king," basically.
Yeah.
And then Thordak's like, "You shall plate for me." And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's what he'll go do. While we're talking about things we really like about the dragons, I want to talk about like their design. Because good lord, do they look so cool?
Oh,
like both like just as an animation style, but just how they're drawn too. Vorgal especially stood out to me because his wings attach completely to his tail.
Yes,
and it's such a little minor detail, but I love how they all look different. Vorgal also has like kind of that cool ice effect, is like almost like hair ?
Yeah, it like horns, like basically like looks like he's got like almost like anime Dragon Ball Z.
Like, yeah, I mean it's kind of like a mane, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, big fan of that. I do want to visit Sovereign Uriel though real fast, since we mentioned him earlier, because I had one little note on that, which is kind of a note for the first 2 episodes of this season, is that I feel like his death could have used a couple more seconds.
Really?
Just a couple more. Because it does sort of feel like the poison goes in, Allura throws the shield up. You have this 1 second where it's like, wait, where's Uriel? He stands up and starts, bleeding out the eyes, and he's like, and it just falls, and that's it. And I know we didn't spend a lot of time with Uriel in the last season, but he was a major character in the stream, especially before it became a stream. Hence why Vox Machina was so involved in the Tal'Dorei Council and Iman. And also he's voiced by Kari Payton. So it just, I don't know. I feel like he deserved maybe a little just a tiny bit of extra time. And I feel like that was kind of going on with the first 2 episodes, is they do feel like a breakneck speed to me.
And that was like one of my like issues, was like Uriel is just such like a good force, right? He's like always advocating for Vox Machina, except when he's like being controlled by the Briarwoods, and
except for that one pesky moment.
Yeah, it's little things, but it was just, I felt like he needed to say something, right? I felt like, because if you weren't watching this just off the show, you're like, oh, okay, King's dead, sad thing. But I didn't feel like it didn't I felt like the show didn't really capture Uriel to his fullest potential. Season 1, season 2, and
speeding through it, how could they? but
yeah,
try just a little
yeah.
something.
I felt like they could have just like give him a line or something, or just like he just kind of stood there, and then the poison takes its effect, starts bleeding, and then falls.
Mm-hmm.
Which I feel like I get why they did it, because it kind of gives this sense of like just absolute dread of just this figure that's supposed to govern this entire city and the continent just is speechless, or as I can't say anything and can't do anything while this attack is happening, while he's like on his last breath. He just kind of falls like Amon. And I kind of think that's kind of like this kind of how it just falls quietly. And
Which I wouldn't say that Amon falls quietly, but
right, in terms of like, the dragons basically just kind of overpower everything in Amon, and they can't really mount any defense, so it kind of just falls without resistance. And I feel like that was kind of like seen, and I was like, that's good. I felt like it was okay, but I did feel like we just needed just a tiny bit more, right? I just wanted something to be like not even positive, but just be like, just show how dreadful it is, or how much doom or how much terror there is.
Or I mean, he seems to be somewhat at peace because his family is safe, at least. I would have liked to have seen maybe like one line, even if it's just like, "Oh, my love," whatever. Like family is like something to note verbally that his family is safe. Other than that sigh, that shows that he is, because he has abdicated. Especially, he is more of a father and husband than he is a ruler at this point. It can go either way, but again, just maybe 5 more seconds.
Yeah, I felt like we just needed a little something more.
On the topic of Iman falling, quietly or not, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to Percy's line about they'd need an army, and how Iman had the largest army before Brimscythe dismantled it. So this is definitely jumping ahead quite a good chunk.
Yeah,
as they're in Castle. Are they in? It is Grayskull, isn't it? I always get confused because that is He-Man and She-Ra.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they're at Grayskull Keep, and he says that Brimscythe dismantled the military of Amon, and I think the choice of words with dismantled is interesting because he makes it sound so bureaucratic. Like Brimscythe, as his human counterpart or human alias, was like defunding the military, as opposed to like lightning cooking thousands of them.
Right, but I mean, even the force that we saw that was going to go investigate wasn't that big of a force to begin with, right?
Right.
So, and you see like how they framed it in this, especially the first few episodes, like they're just trying to get mercenaries or like heroes to go out and investigate this, when they could have easily just sent out the army and gone and look. But the army is now smaller, so now needs to defend the city. So I can kind of see it's like, oh, he probably being like, the general of the army, kind of dismantling it that way, being like, oh, we'll find, no one's going to attack Amon. And so we'll be like, we don't need all these people.
Right.
Or like, oh, we don't need, who's going to attack us by air? We have all the airships.
Yeah. Oh, that was actually one other thing, is during the dragon attack, and that one like ballista just gets knocked like a toothpick, and I'm like, it's a ballista.
Yeah. I was like
it should have at least gotten his wing. Like,
yeah.
Come on.
I did feel the dragons had a lot of plot armor. Like there was like, I felt like it was just supposed to be like the whole doom and gloom, like Grog's axe is shattering.
Right, and I mean, in the stream, that is sort of what happens. It's just that, like, I think in the stream, it's like he rolls like a natural 20 and it still doesn't hit.
He rolls a 19 to hit.
That's right. Okay,
and it doesn't hit. and it's
Right.
just, and you're just like, oh no, like that
And so,
kind
I
of.
mean, how do
So
you translate that to a show is very different, of
mhm,
course. So I think the axe shattering is fine,
mhm.
but it is a little different. I think that like Ballista especially are designed for this type of thing in the
Mhm.
fantasy realism. So it can't
Uh,
get just knocked out like a toothpick.
right, and I mean, you definitely could see like it just seemed like nothing, and I think that was just a little bit of plot armor on the dragons to just show them how big and bad they are. If they didn't, it
Hmm.
basically took the city without taking a scratch. I was like,
Right.
they could have showed a little bit more of like the fight, the resistance, kind of like that. But I think at the same time, they want. I think they in the show they're trying to streamline it more to be just this is so much doom badness, right?
Hmm.
That we want to make sure that they like this was easy for them to do.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of the question of, do you want them to be basically invincible
Mm-hmm.
and you like cannot scratch them, or do you want them to be able to shrug off something that could have really hurt them and just be like, no biggie.
Right. Like if we saw like,
Either way works, but it just
mhm,
depends on what you want.
yeah, just I feel like you kind of see that with the Vox Machina trying to do Rashan
Hmm.
and just kind of absolutely failing. But it was
Yeah.
just like at the same time, like I don't remember in the stream too much of like if they actually took like any damage on that, but I think it was just so much like when they did it, and like it was all planned down to like the minute, right?
Yeah.
The way the Chroma Conclave was going to attack. And yeah, I just felt like, I mean, the ancient dragons,
Yeah. And I
right?
mean, Vex says as much.
Yeah. And it's just like, there's not a whole lot you can do unless you get some very powerful weapons.
Yeah. Which we're on the way to get eventually.
Yep.
A couple things I think are interesting as this game is being, or this show is being translated from a game, or game is translated to a
Mm-hmm.
show, is how a lot of like D&D mechanics are, like how they manifest in this format. So for example, Pike healing Percy and then Gilmore and being like, your leg's gonna have to wait, I'm tapped out, like she's out of
Mm-hmm.
spell slots to heal. I think that's a really decent way to sort of convey the idea of spell slots. And they did a lot of that in season 1 too,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was very fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one thing that I kind of am curious about is Vex's favored enemy being dragons,
Mm-hmm.
because it seems like it gives her like a migraine every time they're near. And I'm kind of like, if it's your favorite enemy,
Yeah.
wouldn't it give you an advantage?
Right. I felt like they could have done that a little bit better. I think it made, because like, because in the game you get to pick, right? You get to pick like
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
two favorite enemies, and
Yeah, I think you
if
get a
it's,
second one at a certain level.
yeah, and like you get favorite terrain and all that, and it's just like if your big thing is dragons, like I feel like you should have like maybe like a sixth sense like about it, like kind of like kind of like that Spidey sense, like
Yeah,
like
I
that
really like how like her ears ring. That's really
yeah,
good.
yeah. I feel like the ears ringing, but I feel like just like every time she heals it, it's like a crippling, it like cripples her a little bit, right? Like it's just like she has to
Mm-hmm.
like just like, I don't know if she's because she's not used to it, but I mean she Laura Bailey picked that as the thing,
Yeah, it's a
and it feels
curious
like,
choice, I think.
so I feel like how they manifest that was a little like, because like it should be like you're like ready to attack. So that's what basically allows you to do is like you're able to sense it
Yeah,
and you're ready to respond right away instead of, you know, oh, I feel something. Something's bad. Oh, it's one of them. And it feels like, oh, now you're behind instead of gaining the advantage, right?
right. So I pretty much only have costuming thoughts left on this episode. How about you?
Uh, I did love. Uh, they finally got the teleportation through the sun tree or through the trees.
Yeah, that was very good.
And I did really like how that was like, you know, like cracking open the tree to kind of reveal this like archway. I felt like that was like a very nice touch, because I feel like it
It's
could have
very
just been
beautiful.
right. I felt like that was just like, oof. I was like, that was like, ooh, that's a cool point. And then everyone running in and it getting closed. It was like,
Hmm.
it felt very like druidy, if that makes sense, because it was like
Yeah.
it like it was opening up like not perfect. It's very like it was like crackling opening.
Yeah, I this is slightly unrelated, but I recently watched a Celtic mythology trilogy, and one of them was Wolf Walkers, and it talked about
Mm-hmm.
how like the city was drawn in this very blocky geometric style, and
Mm-hmm.
how the Wolf Walkers and nature were drawn in very like swirling, sketchy type styles, and it did kind of evoke that sketchy, natural
Mm-hmm.
style of that movie episode, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
with Keyless Tree Stride as well.
Yeah, that's my only other thoughts for episode 1. So let's hear your
Yeah,
costuming.
well, that brings us to my costuming thoughts, because as they fall through the tree into Whitestone, we see Cassandra again. I really wish that Cassandra had a color story, because we see her in red, and I was thinking, okay, now that she's free of the Briarwoods, because you know, gothic horror, we like vampires, we like a good red palette. Um, I was really hoping that now that the Briarwoods are gone, she would be in basically the same outfit, but in blue, or I don't know, maybe even purple. Um, to sort of show kind of where she was and where she is now.
Mm-hmm.
But nope, she's still in the same red. I was like, okay.
Yeah,
I hate that outfit so bad. Like,
it's very like masquerade vampire outfit, right?
yeah, yeah.
Right. It's very, it feels like, especially Cassandra's character from this point is more like of the people. Like she's like aristocratic, but she's more like
Hmm.
down to earth. I feel like I mean she's still prim and proper, but at the same time it could loosen up a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
And I believe that Whitestone's colors are blue, purple, white, and gold, if I'm
Yes.
not mistaken. And so I really would like to see her in either the blue or purple of Whitestone, now
Mm-hmm.
that she is fully back part of Whitestone.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could be that she still feels, since she was under the Briarwoods for so long, everyone viewed her as
Yeah.
the captive. She doesn't feel quite part of Whitestone yet, but we don't really get to see that whole transition, right? Because only popping in
Right.
Whitestone every so then she kind of like is more and more like gradually gets back into her like old self. I think she's still kind of in that this is what I wear type thing. This is like
Hmm.
she hasn't gone wardrobe shopping yet. They're trying to rebuild the city. She's busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does feel, this is just what I wear, and I'm in a cartoon, so deal with it.
Yeah, and at the same time too, it's just like, do they even go back to Whitestone during Chroma Conclave?
Yeah, they do, because they set up their base after Grayskull is destroyed.
Yeah. So like we'll probably get to see her again in this season. So
So
it'll be interesting to see if there is something different.
fingers crossed for a color story.
Ooh.
Um, but one thing I do want to praise a little bit is Gilmore's design. It's the
Mm,
same as last season too. But I love Gilmore's design. I especially love the gold detailing on his costume, because it's something that is very simplified for animation, but it's something I can see a lot of cosplayers taking inspiration and very easily putting like an Indian type design. I know there's like specific words, but I don't know what they are. But I can see cosplayers taking that and
oh,
running with traditional Indian patterns, and I think it would be very beautiful.
oh yeah, no, definitely. Like all of Gilmore's shop really is kind of like especially it's just like take everything, and you kind of get to see like
That was funny.
all like the little stuff that they had, and it was just like Vex was just taking to eat like just bundles of arrow. Grog
Mm-hmm.
gets the
All of these,
belts.
thank you.
Yep, yep.
The belt.
Oops, the belts. Oh, I love
I'm
the
so
belts.
excited.
The broom. So excited.
Yeah, very
And
excited for the broom reveal.
mhm.
That one more note here, which carries over into the other episodes, is I think they're building Scanlan Arc really well.
I see that. Yeah. I feel like I said, because I think the pacing is different.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like, and especially these first 3 episodes, like the first episode's kind of like you get a little taste of it. It's, next 2 you'll definitely get to see it, but I think we get to see the Vox Machina as more individuals and the backgrounds besides just Pulsey,
Yes.
right? Like Briarwood, just
It's
Pulsey.
all Percy, baby.
It's just there's really not much else besides Scanlan turning into a Triceratops, right?
Which is
Like
cool.
which is cool, and you kind of see that they did throw some stuff in there to like, oh, you just there to make people laugh. It was like, oh, but I can do all this.
Mm-hmm.
And we got Pike as well. Pike's refinding like her faith in herself.
I have a note on Pike as we get
Mhm.
into episode 2.
Oh, but I feel like like the twins we don't get to see much in season 1. Grog we don't see much in season 1. So I feel like, and Scanlan as well. So I feel like it's definitely like good that they are taking the spotlight life so much off Pulsey, and now they're kind of dividing it up more equally, right?
Yeah. And I think that helps because it's not anyone's specific arc right now. So I imagine as we get to Grog's arc in the stream, it will focus way more on Grog. If we ever go to see Sildor, then we'll do that again with Vex and Vax. But we'll get into Vex and Vax as we get into episode 3. But yeah, are we ready for episode 2?
I think so.
All right, let's dive in. We fall out of a tree in Vasselheim, and it's funny. The butt cushion is again inappropriate, but it's right there in that perfect middle of like it's inappropriate, but it's still funny. So again, I think Scanlan is a lot better this season and not being just so disgusting. My note on Pike is literally like one of the first things they do once they get into Vasselheim, which is with the last episode and 2 or 3 times in this one, Percy's like, I've got good diplomatic relations, and then we see how well that did him. But I do think it's really funny how Pike is like, we're in a temple. Oh yeah, I'm a holy person. And I'm like, let's not pretend that you didn't just have a whole arc last season about being able to cuss and also keep your faith powers.
Right.
I thought that was pretty funny. Like I get it, but it was just kind of like, yeah, okay, Pike, whatever.
Yeah. And I think that's some other part of the like table dynamic is, you have like people that are good speakers and great communicators as their character, high charisma. But it's always good to let other people try to get that going. I see they were trying to do that there. So it's like, hey, how about we let the only person that's holy or have some connection to all this go and actually speak, even though they might not be the most bureaucratic or charisma forward, but their background suits the need, and you kind of, as players, you definitely got to use that between everyone. So I felt like I could see some of the like tabletop, like table manners, definitely happening there.
Yeah. And with a table that large, because it's 7, is that right? Yeah, pretty sure it's 7. It is really hard to make sure everyone has time. So I can definitely appreciate how the show is encouraging tables to share that and pay more attention to making sure that you give other characters time. But that brings us to Highbearer Vord. What are your thoughts on Highbearer Vord?
I felt like the Highbearer's presence was better in like the tabletop, right? Like I felt like
she's so brief in the cartoon.
Yeah, and I felt like, and it was kind of like she was kind of like talking with you and with everyone, and it was just like you don't get to see like how intimidating and as like powerful as she like or regal as she like was. And like I felt like listening to like Matt's describe how Matt was like portraying it and how it was like set up was just basically like this person is like low-key terrifying.
Yeah.
and should be respected, and then you all come in here like a ragtag, just asking for help to one of like the oldest city, and she's just. I did like that part of this whole just like shutting them down of just like, we hear you, we understand this is happening, we just choose not to do anything.
Yeah,
I felt like we could have put a little bit more like oomph into that.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned just like shutting them down. One part that I thought was kind of like, because I love the back half of the conversation, but the front half where it's like, hey, we need your help, and she's like, I'm just gonna get it from this waterfall right here.
Yeah, like it's just like you all
okay,
incidental.
Interesting. So I don't know, I thought that was a little bit strange, and that's one of those points where the dialogue felt a little, for lack of a better word, scripted to me. But that was pretty much all my notes on Vord. But then we get the gnome that tells them to go to the Slayer's Take, which I was wondering how they were going to include, since it comes before the Briarwood arc in the stream.
Right.
Yeah. And how they were going to introduce, because I mean, obviously the Slayer's Take episodes in the stream take forever, in a way that they do not have time in the show. So I was like, how are we going to introduce Cash and Zara and the Take? Are they going to join the Take? Which seems like the answer is no.
Yeah. I did like how it made it very D&D like right, felt very tabletop of this random person being like, oh, listen here, vegetables, go over to these people that might be able to help. Yeah. Like I was just like, that's just like classic trope. Here's like a bone to give your players to get them towards the right path, right? And I felt
and then Grog just like wanders off.
Yeah.
And no one checked.
Kind of keep him on like close by.
Yeah, I will say I do love his scene with Earthbreaker Groon, although I do feel like it's a little out of place just because of how he gets there.
Right, because I feel like
how he gets there is very Grog, but also we're doing something important. You mean to tell me Pike's not keeping an eye for him?
Right.
I don't know.
I could take it or leave it how he got there. I do think it being split so much was a little like the juxtaposition of the two. Because
you thought that was good, or thought that was not so great?
I didn't think that it was not so great. Just because I don't know how to describe this. Was just like, it's a very pivotal scene for Grog, but this episode didn't feel like it was supposed to be about Grog.
Right? Yeah.
Like it was. This is like, we need to find information about the greater good, and this is going to see Odessa and all the Sphinx and Slayer's Take and seeing all that, and then. Does it in the tabletop? Does he go and see Earthbreaker Groot alone?
No. So whenever in the streams, actually I had to research this and double check because it's been so long since I've listened to Vox Machina. He is in the Stormlord's Ring fighting Kern, and then he sees Groon like watching, and someone either makes an insight or whatever, and it's like, oh, this guy's maybe important. And so then the group goes to see Groon together, and Grog fights him the first time with the, where do you find your strength? I don't know. Okay, come back later.
Right.
So we get the same scene, but everyone is watching, and they all go there together.
Right.
And then they come back way, way later.
Yeah. Like, I think, towards the end, I think, right?
Yeah, I expect we'll see him again before this season is over.
Right. Now, when you say it like that, because it's been a while, it makes sense why they did it, because his strength, spoiler alerts, comes from his friends.
Yeah.
Right? And his friends are not there, so he's not strong. So I can kind of see what they were doing with that. Is he is alone trying to fight Earthbreaker Groot. It makes sense, but it felt weird that they were just like it could have been a smaller scene. Like it could have been.
Yeah.
It felt a little too long, especially with how much was going on with like the Slayer's take and like all the trials.
I mean, I like how everyone is going through a trial of some kind. Just most of them are going through it with Osisa, and then Grog is 1v1ing Groon. I do like that pretty well. It's just the fact that he is following his friends to find out information for the greater good, and then it's just like, oh yeah, I'm hungry because my sword says so. Cool, got my food, got my ale, got my burp and my fart. Good to know. Okay, butterfly. Ooh, an arena. And he's just kind of like, ooh, shiny, which is very Grog, but it's also like that's my only problem with it is that it's just like wandering off one thing after another to then get to this really cool scene, which makes it then feel out of place. But that's just me. Go ahead.
I did want to mention of just the design of Vasselheim. Breathtaking. Yeah. Like when you first see it when they come out, I was just like
the tree and the waterfall.
Every and like how like you get to see like all like the different temples are kind of like how they segment the city a little bit. Like you see like, oh, that's that pile, that's the Sun Temple, and like how everything is like split up, but like all connected. It feels old, right? Like even when they walk into town, it feels older. And it's not like big shining towers besides like the basilicas and the temples. Like everything feels like this is a holy site that's been here for millennia. And it kind of feels, it gave that weight to it, which was nice. Of like, guys, we are in a very special place. Don't fuck up.
Yeah, right? And you see that in the architecture.
Yeah.
Because when you first get that like pan of the whole city, you see these houses that are kind of more like, very large pointed thatched roof types, keeping the snow off of them. And that's like, they seem very basic. But then you see the Stormlord's temple, which is, built out of wood, but it's still very elaborate. And then you get into Highbearer Vord's territory and it is ornate. And so I like how you kind of see how this town, this city has been built up over the centuries with your smaller houses, your larger houses, and then the difference in the temples, just how they look and the materials they're made of. I think that's really interesting to see.
Yeah, like it feels like it's been like slowly growing out and like people from like everywhere come here. It doesn't feel like just one thing is from there. So.
All right. So. Getting into the Slayer's take, Zara and Cash, baby, I love them.
Oh God, I love Cash.
My favorite thing about Cash, especially in This Is the Cartoon, is Vex trying to flirt with him and him being like, "You're really close to me." And I'm just like, yes, men can be uncomfortable too.
Yeah, it's something I want to talk about a little bit later, but it might be saved to next week's, depending on where we get to. But it's something that they did retcon, which I was very appreciative of.
Talking about Cash and Zara, or
Cash and Keyleth.
Okay, because I think you said you watched a little bit ahead. I haven't seen 4 yet.
Yeah, so when we get to that point next time, I will go over that. But I think
cool. I can't wait.
How they do Cash was like they tweaked them a little bit, but for the better.
Yeah. I really think that the dynamic he and Keyleth have as of episodes 2 and 3 is really good. It's very fun. In the tomb in episode 3 being like, lucky I was here. Yeah, I was lucky. And Keyleth's just being like, I'm so goofy. I don't know what to do. I think it's very, very fun. The one thing I do wish that I kind of missed from the stream, I know like Zara says what Vex and Vax did, being stealing the Hydra head and therefore how much they owe for it. But I didn't catch anywhere in my couple watches where they said what the rules of the take were. And and why that was such a big deal, because it was a huge deal in the stream.
Oh yeah, like it
we
was
had
like
a whole 4 to 6 episodes about it.
yeah.
Like, it was enormous. So I do think that's a little. I would have liked them to kind of maybe acknowledge the gravity that it actually was.
Yeah, because that's
that's the only thing I really missed from that.
Because that was like a big conflict too. Like it was just like this, and the thing is too, we go back to the Slayos take so much from this point back, for like especially season 1, like just, and it was just like the amount of difficulty they had just trying to convince people it was so hard because they did mess up so big, right?
Yeah.
By stealing the head. And I felt like just like, oh, you two are wanted by us. We're gonna beat the crap out of you. And then, oh nope, the Sphinx wants to see you. Bye.
Yeah. I do like how everyone was grumpy about it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we can't tell our patron no, but we'd like to. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, I felt like that was good because it was just like, what else we can do if our patron wants it. But at the same time, it's just like I felt like we could have been someone like either one of those could describe how big of a deal that was.
Yeah. Besides
just Vex just kind of like doing that kind of banter that they go with.
Yeah, even if it was either one of them, because the thing about the take's rules is that it's not just the rules of the take, it is the laws of Vasselheim. And so I think it would have been helpful to even just have a line that basically said, it's like, well, Vasselheim has laws. Like, it's not just we're mad about getting cheated out of our money or our, mounted head on the wall. It's the law of Vasselheim. I think that would have been helpful to really underline how important that was. But again, that's just me.
Oh, definitely.
So that about wraps us up for season 2, episode 2. And we meet one other character before we leave the episode. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we hit that character and bounce?
Oh, I think we had a good point.
All right. So Victor is our last character in episode 2. And for such a fan favorite character, he felt like a throwaway for plot information.
I was a little mad. He was
just so nothing.
Because it's like not even the first time you meet Victor, right? It's the second time.
This would have been the second time.
Yeah, this would have been the second time they met Victor.
Because that's when he loses the fingers. It's supposed to be character development or character progression is what Marisha says.
Yeah. And then it's nice to have. It was basically just kind of a cameo, right? It wasn't
It's
really...
like, yeah, Victor's back, but
and
he was there.
To be fair, in the stream, he's just more... the interactions are just basically comedic relief until they find out the information and like, oh, this is important. He's such a funny character, and it just felt like just like a kind of nod to people, throwaway scene, and people that would get it, right?
Which is a lot of what the first season felt like.
So it's kind of like a little bit like a throwback to that, where it feels like I don't think
you were doing so good.
Yeah. I don't think they've actually described how rare guns and gunpowder are. Like, I think you see it with a little bit with the Vax in season 1 of like, don't you dare point that thing at us, type thing, because they really like don't know.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah, but like at this time, gunpowder and guns are like extremely, extremely rare. Like Percy is like one of 2.
Percy invented guns in this world,
basically. And like even gunpowder is just like, so it's just to have like this character is like, oh yes, I know how to do gunpowder. It's like, okay, then why are not more people just getting guns or getting gunpowder? It felt very like, in terms of like plot things of just like, oh, more people can have guns because there's a gunpowder vendor. Except it's a shack in the middle of the woods where this crazy guy is gonna blow himself up, and Lily gives him a hogshead, a literal hogshead. That's one of my favorite
Yeah,
things. A little hogshead
it's so funny.
full of gunpowder. I was like, here you go. And
Yeah,
it's
so I
just
mean, I
like,
definitely would have loved an actual scene of
mhm,
Victor and not just oh, there's gunpowder. Oh yeah, I sold it to someone else. Ripley, Percy, we gotta
Ripley.
go. Okay, bye.
Right. Oh no, the place is gonna explode. It's just
Yeah,
like,
so goofy, and it's like, is Victor dead? Because I mean, he could be based on how that scene ended.
yeah, like it's like, oh, it was just such a throwaway. I felt like it was kind of in. If you look at the stream, kind of a funny throwaway moment, but everyone just like latched on to like
Yeah, we all
Victor.
loved Victor.
Everyone
Victor.
just see like Matt Mosul like hunches back and be like, gunpowder. Yes. I mean,
Amazing. 10 out of 10.
just like one of the best, like if you're at a table and someone pulls out a Victor like that, instantly one of like we must protect this NPC at all costs. Like this is one of like the best NPCs. So yeah, I was a little disappointed with it, but I felt like it was just for the people that had been around and
Yeah,
watched
for
the stream.
sure.
So I could take it or leave it, but I was just like, we all want more
We
Victor.
just wanted more.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of 10 out of 10, I don't have a lot of notes for episode 3 because I thought it was a 10 out of 10 episode.
Oh.
So in the spirit of Rantasy, I don't have a lot to rant about here. This might be my favorite episode of the show, period. Like, it was so good. It took time where it needed to. We had a good moment around the campfire. We had time spending in the tomb. We had good time on our flashbacks, and they paralleled what was happening in the tomb so well. Like, I love whenever you see like the rain in the forest with Vex and Vax are kids, and the puddle is the same shape as the puddle in the tomb. Like, it's a little thing. Obviously, that's not how that works in real life, but the parallels were chef's kiss, so good.
Yeah. Episode 3, definitely the strongest of them all in terms of just storytelling narrative. It didn't feel as much as a D&D game. It felt like an animated show.
Yeah,
I felt like that's what, like, all the other ones kind of like, you kind of get that a little bit. That one especially, I felt like by itself was great storytelling of the episode from start to finish. It was just like everything happening was phenomenal. Like going into the Mother of Raven's tomb, fighting the fish people, not too gory
the Adaro.
either. Yeah, and not too gory either. Like it was still some good parts.
Yeah, I was very happy with the gore level in that episode.
Yeah, I was like, it was like, and also how like everything was going, how everyone was interacting with it, and like everyone getting split up, and then how everyone's like that, and then like the ending, you're just like, right? Like you usually don't get an ending like that on episode 3, right?
Right.
But I feel like if something like that happens, it's like later in the season, because we haven't seen people die, like, of the party, and like,
and I remember that in the stream too, where it's like,
yeah,
does that put you below 0? And it's like, yeah. Oh, shit. Like you see her just sort of figure it out, and like,
yeah, yeah, like, and the thing is too, I feel like it's been a nice thing with like healing and stuff, that it still seems temperamental, because Matt makes it so temperamental, right? Especially with the resurrections and stuff like that. So, and you don't really know that yet because no one's performed one yet on the show.
And at this point, Pike doesn't have it.
No, not at all. He just has basic healing, and so it's just like this happens, and it's just absolute shock of like, oh, Vax just died. Vex just died. Yeah. And like Vax wasn't there.
I'm Vex, that's Vax.
That's and Vax is not there. Right. And you get to see like I don't know how they did it, but the English that he had was
Well,
just
I mean, I think that's where the flashbacks
the
paralleling
flash.
it works so well
I,
because you have him trying so desperately to protect her from
mhm,
Sildor,
mhm,
and then they leave, and she's like, "I don't need you." And the next time she sees him, he's crying in the woods because no, she doesn't. And he
mhm,
tries to tell her that, but then she cuts
mhm,
him off and she leaves.
mhm. And I felt like, because that's like the whole like dynamic between those two is like Vax needs Vex,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason why he's, especially for something like that's like his thing, right? And they and then this outcome is just like they just showed it so well of just like, because I knew it was coming, right? You
Right.
you, you
Yeah.
know
And
you
I still
know
cried.
I was still like jaw on the floor, like
Yeah.
oh no, oh, like it felt so, it was like the perfect amount of just with the flashbacks, just the perfect buildup, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and it was just like, because it seems so, because I mean she's like nonchalant, she's like, oh, I can do what my brother does, and that's like, and dead.
Which, I mean, the thing is, like,
Mm-hmm.
she checks the coffin, and the
Mm-hmm.
coffin is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's very interesting how that scene goes, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, first off, I think it's really funny that Vax is like, all of you stay put, no one do anything. And then the
Mm-hmm.
very next thing he says is, Pickle, I need your light. It's like, except for you, Pike, I need
Uh,
light it up, baby.
yeah.
You do something. Which I thought was just kind of funny. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not mad about it. It's just, I thought he said not to move. Um, and so then as he's down in that little like treasure room, everyone's just looking around and doing what they're not supposed to. And so
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, oh, we probably should wait for Vax. And it's like, yeah, he wouldn't approve, would he? And Vex is like, fine. It's like, I'll show
Yeah.
y'all. And checks it. It's fine. And I love the moment where she's like, we should wait for Vax, but it's already too late. Percy's already
Mm-hmm.
reached for the necklace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it's just bam.
And God,
And
poor Trinket, the roar that Trinket gives.
oh yeah,
Oh,
like
oh.
like
The one part about that I think is, again, kind of like, what kind of area are we in again? It's like, you would absolutely hear Trinket's roar from where Vax was, but he doesn't pay
mm-hmm.
any mind to anything going on until Scanlan addresses him specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, like, I think it's still good. It's like, I was gone for 30 seconds. What could have happened?
Mm-hmm.
Well, really bad stuff happened, especially
Everything.
for you.
Yeah, bad things. Every bad thing happened.
But no, I have very few notes on this one. I think it was a stellar episode. The only other thing I have is a very throwaway line that is a little bit of foreshadowing, which is Keyleth's "A bird, how does that help?" Miss Goldfish.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that gets included in later episodes. But yeah, I'm very
I hope
excited to
so.
watch episode 4. So
Yes. Yeah, I know 4, 5, and 6 came out yesterday, and I watched 4 because I couldn't help myself after how episode 3
yeah.
ended. I needed to like.
I basically was refusing to watch it so that I wouldn't get my episodes mixed up and mention something I'm not supposed to today.
Yeah.
So I'm watching it tomorrow.
Yes, do so. Everyone else, please watch it. It's
so good.
So I am thoroughly enjoying myself for the second season than the first. Not to say that the first was bad. There were some moments, but the second season feels more put together.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And I think that's just because how I feel like that's part of the reason is because the full season was a Kickstarter that broke a whole bunch of records, and it got picked up by Amazon, and it was like
talk about the records.
Yeah, like I feel like, and then like it happened during the pandemic, and all that stuff happened, and that shut down, and thing. I felt like it was just sped up so much because it was such a sped up process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, Amazon just picked us up. Now we have to we have shorter timelines. And I felt like you can definitely see that. But I definitely feel just storytelling wise, I think they definitely could be like. I wonder how they feel about season one of just like the speed and story tempo of it, because it's like season two is just, it feels slower and more deliberate, right?
Yes.
It doesn't feel like we're just trying to hit the highlights. That's what I felt about the Briarwood arc was.
Yeah, it was very highlight reel, wasn't it?
Most of it was just highlight reels, and I felt like, because you don't have to show everything with the Chroma Conclave. There's so much that stuff that happens in that whole arc. You can't show everything. But I think they tried to show everything with the Briarwood arc, and it's just like it kind of, and also having those 2 episodes. I think if it was just Briarwoods for all 10,
yeah,
would have had a little bit more better pacing, and I think that's what we're seeing now is how we can go on this way with it.
Yeah, we're getting a full season to one arc.
I think,
although that is a long arc because we have 4 dragons to fight, so I do wonder where the cutoff is going to land for the cartoon.
Yeah, it's interesting because what's after Conclave? Does it go Vecna right after Chroma?
I believe there's one arc. Ripley's right after that. But Ripley's kind of a mini arc.
Yeah, but basically, yeah. So basically, from there, then we get to go, super big bad. So, because I mean, they've approved 3 seasons for the full campaign.
Oh, I don't know how many seasons they've agreed to for the Vox Machina episodes, but I do know they've already approved Mighty 9.
They approved Mighty 9. I think they agreed upon 3 seasons for Amazon.
Yes, I mean we're definitely going to see Ripley again based on Victor's appearance, but I don't know where they'll put her.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting because that's still it might be a mini arc, but that's still very important.
Yes, for sure.
Yes.
Well, do you have anything else to say about season 2 as the first 3 episodes stand right now?
No, I think they all play off each other greatly, and it's nice to see that.
Yeah.
Right? Because especially with how season 1 was going, I was just like, is this just a cash grab? Or are they actually gonna do it? And I felt like like I said, I was kind of a little disappointed with the full season of just how it all turned out. But I felt like this one, I was just like, this is a show about
right.
a stream. This is not just anime. The other one felt like they're animating the highlights of the stream reel.
Yeah.
This feels like a animated show that could stand by itself.
Yes. No, I think that's a really good way to describe the difference between the seasons so far.
I felt, Soul Season was just a little bit too much throwaways, little more just like, hey, look at this for the characters. This one feels like a show, and I like it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all for us for right now. We'll watch the next one and probably go live again in 2 weeks because we're pretty much doing this after our regular Dragon Age TTRPG stream. Great game. If you want to watch it or play it yourself, definitely recommend. But yeah, with that, I think we'll get on out of here.
Well, see ya, folks.